Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Coach Cody podcast. Hope you're all surviving out there with the tariffs and all the other, crazy shenanigans going on. We won't be talking about that today, so you're saved from any political talk. But I did want to talk about self-sabotage, which feels a little bit like America is self-sabotaging itself these days. Anyways, so I wanted to talk about this specifically just because it's a very common thing that happens, something that I come across daily with clients, but even myself. And one of the things that I realized this year, I self-sabotage as well. And it's something that is done subconsciously most times. So I might not even be aware of it until after the fact. And I know for me, I've been working through 2024 was a shit show for me. Not a great year. Fell into deep depression. And now that I'm coming out of it, starting to feel more like myself, I noticed that, I've been beating myself up a little bit with my lack of progress, physically over the last year and not really being in the place that I wanted to be because shit, life happened. Shit hit the fan and I'm still recovering. I don't have my 100% energy back yet. Sometimes there's some days I feel good, I feel great, and I can push myself. And then there's other days where if I push myself too much, it just pushes me over the edge and then it just sucks my energy out. And then I gotta take some time to recover. And it's hard on those days because I'm just like, I feel like I should just be able to get right back into it. I should be able to push. I should be going 100% and making up and trying to catch up for the lack of progress I made in 2024 this year. But it just doesn't work that way. So I've essentially been self-sabotaging by negative self-talk, beating myself up for not being where I want to be, and a lot of blame, telling myself I'm a slacker and that I suck. And obviously that's not productive. So for me, I really sabotage with negative self-talk and also not celebrating the small wins, which is ironic because I always talk about celebrating small wins, but for some reason, I don't think that applies to me. Nah, small is not enough. And that is a mindset that a lot of people fall into, including clients. And if I'm going to practice what I preach, this was a year where it really showed me that I needed to do that and acknowledge small wins. And I think even, so it's I might not be where I want to be, but small wins mean for me currently, acknowledging if I'm able to get each workout in for the week and, or even getting a full night sleep, or getting through a day where I don't let anxiety take the wheel, or I don't let OCD take the wheel. And so I've been really trying to acknowledge that, especially with the OCD, because that has been super, super rough to deal with the past year. And I'm in finally getting in a better spot with everything. So it's easier when you're feeling a little bit more positive to acknowledge the small wins. But of course, you have your off days and you start nitpicking yourself. But so just some things I noticed in myself. And if you can relate, then cool, because we're going to talk more about this and other ways that you might self-sabotage. Maybe you're not even aware of it. So hopefully this brings some awareness to the table so that you can kind of change things moving forward and even kind of recognize it in yourself when you might be self-sabotaging. So what is self-sabotage anyways? That is the question. So let's just go through the definition. And the definition is a self-sabotage is when your thoughts or behaviors actively work against your goals, even if that's not your intention. So most of the time, it isn't something that we're doing consciously. It sneaks in as rationalizations, delays, or justifications. So some examples, maybe you might skip the gym because you're too tired, even though you scheduled it into your day and it's a task that you've put there and you're just kind of I'm feeling a little tired today. I think I'll skip. That's kind of a justification, trying to, justify yourself to not stay consistent or show up for yourself. And although there are times where you might want to listen to your body. If you didn't get any sleep, if something else maybe you're sick, then yes, you should definitely rest. But if you're doing it frequently, might want to audit that and make sure you're not just justifying not going to the gym and self-sabotaging your consistency. So another example might be going off plan with food, and maybe you indulged in something that was not in line with your goals and you're I already messed up, might as well just go into fuck it mode. Fuck it, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want today, doesn't matter, I'm not gonna track it, just going to throw the whole day away. So that's another way that you might self-sabotage, which is getting to that perfectionistic all or nothing mindset, which is incredibly common. I'm guilty of it as well. I'll go into details of how to spot that and what to do, how to reframe that. Another thing is constantly switching programs or diets due to impatience or expectations not being in the right place, thinking that something should happen quicker. And then you think your program's broken and you need to do something else because you're not seeing results as fast as you would like to. So then you're actually stalling your progress because you just keep switching from program to program and you're just spinning your wheels. Definitely have to make sure we're keeping expectations in the right place. But overall, self-sabotage it's not about being lazy. It's not about just not wanting to do the thing or do the work. It's usually some sort of fear or perfectionism that's the underlying cause. So our brain likes to try to keep us safe in old patterns, even if those patterns are not serving us. So recognizing that your comfort zone is not so great for you, it's not always easy to come to terms with. And it's especially not easy to change because we're just wired to want to stay in our comfort zone. But unfortunately, as the saying goes, growth happens outside of your comfort zone. I also like to laugh and think, I'm like, what is comfort zone? I feel like for me, having OCD and pretty severe anxiety, I'm like, there is extremely uncomfortable for me, and then there's just less comfortable. I don't know if I have a comfort zone. I just have something that feels less extremely uncomfortable. I would love to have just like an incredibly comforting comfort zone that I could just go to sometimes, but at base level, I'm just kind of always uncomfortable. But anyways, all right. Why do we self-sabotage? That is also the question. So as I mentioned, some of those things already, fear of failure being one of the biggest ones. It's like, if you can't fail if you don't truly try. And that's just a way of protecting yourself because it's hard to come to terms with failure sometimes. But as I always say, there's no such thing as failure as long as you learn from the situation. The fear of failure, it might look like avoiding tracking progress or pushing yourself because you're afraid of coming up short. So if sometimes maybe you're avoiding stepping on the scale, you're avoiding taking those progress photos because you're afraid that you're not going to see the results that you want, or you're afraid that you didn't quite meet the standards or expectations that you had for yourself. And unfortunately, that just ends up not getting us any closer to our goals. Avoidance is never the answer. So that is, so that's one example of why we self-sabotage. I'll get into, how to reframe and get out of the cycle of self-sabotage in a second. But another thing that can cause self-sabotage is fear of success. And I always laughed at this one because I was just like, why the fuck would anyone self-sabotage themselves for being potentially successful? And then I realized this is something that I actually have done without even knowing it. See, it's totally subconscious sometimes. So basically, fear of success, meaning, you start seeing results maybe, and then you kind of back off because success feels, unfamiliar, or you're afraid that if you succeed, there'll be higher expectations of you, whether it's from yourself, that pressure, or from other people. Like they might hold you to a higher standard if you succeed. People might look up to you or look to you for advice or etc. And maybe that's just too much for you to think about. I know for me, I'm very competitive, and there's been a few things in my past where we can just use running, for example. After I won my first 5K, I had a really hard time getting out there and doing another 5K because the expectation was so high. I didn't want to, I was like, how can I win and then do another race? And then what if I lose? Then I just feel like I got lucky when I won. And what if I never win again? And that prevented me from competing for quite some time. So that is definitely a way to self-sabotage, and I laughed at it at one point, but it's real. I was just, ill-informed of what that actually meant to fear success. So another thing, perfectionism, this one is huge. So it's that all or nothing thinking, if it's not perfect, it's pointless. So this could look like missing a workout or having one untracked meal and then just throwing the whole day out, being like, I ruined everything, progress is gone, even though one meal is not gonna destroy your progress. But our brains like to trick us into thinking we have to be perfect or we're not going to see the progress. So another thing, as I mentioned earlier, comfort zone. The familiar habits feel safer, even if they're harmful. So maybe you're used to kind of late night snacking or using food as comfort, or, yeah, that thing is just like familiar to you and you know that it doesn't serve you, but you've just done it for so long and it's your comfort zone. So you just keep doing it regardless. Comfort zones are tough ones because they're really hard to break. So knowing what your comfort zone is, and then also thinking about small steps you can take outside of it. So you don't want to you can get into the all or nothing mindset about getting out of your comfort zone. And this just reminds me of doing, you know, therapy for OCD, where it's exposure therapy or ERP, where they definitely push you outside your comfort zone. The exposures, like that's the whole therapy, but you do it in such small steps so that it's not overwhelming. So you don't just retreat back into your comfort zone and just be like, yep, never trying that again. So you have to kind of find a sweet spot. Yes, you need to get out of your comfort zone, but there's a limit to how much you want to get out of it at once, because you don't want to get so far out that you just retreat back and just never step foot out of your comfort zone again. So yeah, just be careful about going all or nothing with that one. So what are some common ways that people tend to self-sabotage, especially in their fitness journey? So these are some things that I've seen plenty of times. You might find these familiar. If so, well, let's go over them so you know what to look out for. So over restricting your food or your dieting. So trying to like quote unquote eat clean 100% of the time. Generally, that just leads to binging or burnout. So if you're making some foods off limits and you're just trying to be perfect with your food, it usually leads to fuck it mode. And then you just kind of get in this cycle that is really hard to get out of. So be careful not to over restrict. And I'll go into ways to combat that in a second, or how you might approach that. So another thing, having the all or nothing mindset, as I mentioned before. So one bad meal, maybe, come Wednesday, you're cruising along, you've got some momentum going, you've had a great week so far. Come Wednesday and you end up eating a whole row of Oreos. And then you're like, well, I'll just start over Monday. And then you just throw your whole week out. It's a great way to never see progress and just continue to spin your wheels. So another one, negative self-talk, which I talked about my experience personally with that. So yeah, telling yourself you suck or that you're a failure or etc. is a great way to destroy motivation. I don't know. I mean, I can see there being some motivation coming from, I've used trolls comments before as motivation to work harder or get in the gym. But when it's an overwhelming amount of negativity, it usually works in the opposite way. So being your own bully generally is not going to motivate you. Instead of being your own bully, it's better to just think of how might a friend support you? How would you talk to a friend? Or how would you want to be supported by a coach? Like imagine someone is coaching you. How would they support you through something? They probably wouldn't tell you that you sucked or that you're a failure. And if there has been a coach that has said that to you, then it's hopefully you're no longer with them and they should just quit their job because they suck at it. So another one, unrealistic expectations. So expecting fast results and quitting when it takes longer than you expected. You're never going to get anywhere anyways. So it's like the fastest way to get results is to not quit. So you have two choices. You can either be patient and, time's going to pass anyways. So you might as well just keep moving forward towards your goals. Because 5 years from now, life could look very different. You could have started and stopped a program numerous times because you felt like you weren't seeing results quick enough. Or you could go as slow as you need for 5 years and be exponentially further along on your journey than you would have been if you just tried to get things faster and ended up quitting over and over. So be careful about where your expectations are. It's so important. So how do you break the cycle? So biggest thing is setting realistic, sustainable goals. So don't aim to drop like 20 pounds in a month. And I mean, what is realistic kind of depends on where you're at. So if you ever watched My 600 Pound Life, being 600 pounds means, dropping 20 pounds in a month is more realistic for some people. Like that would be a realistic thing. But for most people, 20 pounds in a month is not so realistic. Anywhere, it depends how much you have to lose. But 4 pounds, 8 pounds in a month is awesome, even. Especially, if you're starting, aim for like 1 to 2 pounds a week. And even if you're losing just 1 pound a week, a month later, that's like 4 pounds. So you're getting somewhere. So don't eat less because you think it's going to make things go quicker. And just make sure it's something you can sustain also. Because if you're a crash diet, like I've never met someone who said, I got my dream body and I got my health back by crash dieting. It just doesn't exist. So sustainability is incredibly important. Try to be patient and just picture, ask yourself, can I sustain this in the long run? If the answer is no, might want to reevaluate what you're doing. So, number two, being flexible with your nutrition. So, instead of trying to be perfect with it, I go by 80-20 rule. So, 80% of the time, you're on track, you're nourishing your body, sticking to whole foods, doing what you're supposed to, doing things that are in line with your goals. And then the other 20% of the time, allow for some wiggle room, allow for some fun. Maybe you want to go to a social event, you just want to enjoy yourself, enjoy the food. That's that 20% of the time that you allow for a little bit more wiggle room. Personally, for me, that is what has worked best. Anytime you try to just be 100% perfect with something, it backfires. So another thing with this kind of falls into the next one, which is progress over perfection. But if you're also labeling foods as good or bad, or attaching your morality to the foods you eat, that is something that is also going to trip you up, because then you're just gonna feel shame and guilt. And progress is, that's not the breeding ground for progress, just being caught up in shame and guilt. So yeah, there are foods that are better for you, that are more nutritious, that are better choices, but it doesn't make you a bad person if you eat something that isn't the most nourishing. You are no better of a person for eating an apple versus a Snicker bar. So that's what I mean about not attaching your morality, or not labeling foods as good or bad, meaning like you're a good person or you're a bad person. Are there foods that are better? Yes. But again, it says nothing about you personally. And that's the thing that I really just want to hammer home. So, as far, again, progress over perfection. So you want to focus on your progress. So progress is way better. So taking action, even if it is imperfect, is 1,000 times better than taking no action at all, because you're just waiting for the perfect time to start, or you're waiting for life to calm down. It's like, take that messy action, because you're still going to move forward, even if it's not perfect. So again, don't wait for the perfect time. Life's always going to throw shit at you. So you might as well just be messy about it. So you want to focus on, weekly trends, not daily perfection, because the overall goal is what matters most. Don't trip yourself up over things that in the long run are just minuscule and are not going to disrupt your progress long term. So, how to tame the negative self-talk. As we already mentioned, that's a way to self-sabotage. So the first thing you got to do is actually catch yourself in the act, which is not always easy, especially if it's something you just do and you've been doing it for your whole life. You might not even notice how mean you are to yourself. I know, I catch myself doing it sometimes. And before, I did not even catch myself. And it wasn't until I started going to therapy, my therapist would be like, well, you're kind of an asshole to yourself. Maybe we can reframe that. As if I'm like, well, yeah, I suck at this and I'm failing because of XYZ. So instead of saying I failed or I suck, you could just be like, I'm learning. And at any time that something doesn't work out, or quote unquote, maybe you failed, but even though I don't think failure exists, you're just collecting data and you're finding out ways that you could do better the next time. As long as you're acknowledging, how to improve the situation, what you can take away from that situation, then again, you didn't mess anything up. So again, with the negative self-talk, as I already mentioned previously, try to think of how you talk to a friend, or how you would like a coach to support you through something, or your therapist. Either way. So one thing you can do to recognize your patterns to break the cycle of self-sabotage is journaling. So even if it's a mental note, but it's better if you write it down, but noting triggers and finding patterns of self-sabotage. Like, when do you find yourself self-sabotaging? Is it when you're feeling sad? Is it when you're feeling down? Is it when you had a phone call with a family member, or something was upsetting? Yeah, the more that you're able to note and write down, the more likely you are to become more aware of how you might be, disrupting your progress. Last but not least, as I mentioned, something that I'm practicing currently so that I don't just beat myself up constantly is celebrating the small wins. So always acknowledge your consistency. So even if something wasn't perfect, be like, okay, but I still did it. Like, maybe that workout wasn't great. Maybe I felt like shit and I didn't want to be there, but I still showed up. and I still got it done. So awesome. Celebrate that consistency. So even celebrating forming better habits, even if it's something simple as flossing your teeth every day, like everything counts because everything builds momentum forward, and that builds confidence. And the more confidence you have in yourself, the more you believe in yourself, the more you start to learn that you're capable of doing other things and taking more steps outside your comfort zone and making more progress. So yeah, don't forget those small wins. So anyways, to wrap it up, self-sabotage doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means your brain's trying to protect you because you're a human. A lot of the things we do, just kind of this biological thing that we got to try to fight against in modern days. So let yourself be human, but show up imperfectly and try to recognize the signs of self-sabotage and, moving forward in a different way the next time. And so it's just one small step at a time, one decision at a time, one meal at a time. Keep taking those steps forward and make sure to check in with yourself and really be honest and audit yourself and what you might be doing to get in your own way. Yeah. All right. So that's all for this episode. So I'm going to wrap this up. But if this resonated with you, or if you recognize yourself in any of these self-sabotage cases, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your stories, or maybe some things that you realized you were doing, maybe you didn't realize before, and maybe can keep you accountable. Just leave it in the comments below, or we can, keep each other accountable with this. So yeah. Don't forget to join the Discord community if you have not already. That is one way to get some support. If you're going through some self-sabotage situations, we can talk about it together if you would like. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes. And thanks y'all for listening. Peace out. I'll talk to you next time.